Let's talk about that cyber attack on the Colonial Pipeline, which, as I mentioned, is the largest in the U.S. It was subject of a cyber attack. There's speculation here that those behind the attack are a ransomware group called DarkSide that might be asking for money in exchange for them now ceasing this cyber attack. Colonial Pipelines, it sounds like, has not necessarily had the cyber attack on the systems that directly operate the pipeline, but as a safeguard, they have shut down the entire system. And so now there is an effort underway on the part of the administration and the industry to try to figure out how to continue fuel flowing to the U.S. But in the meantime, we are seeing the effect on prices. Jared Blikre has been tracking that effect. And, already, obviously, Jared, we've been seeing a lot of action in commodities lately, and then this happens. So talk us through the energy complex and how this is being felt.
Sure thing. We did see an initial price spike, and futures opened last night at about 5 p.m. Eastern, at 6 p.m. Eastern, excuse me. And if you look at the price action, especially in gasoline futures, a lot of times these kinds of events work themselves out over a few days or weeks. This is highly reminiscent, at least to me, about the Saudi Aramco attacks that we had a few years ago. Those were terrorist attacks, and they physically attacked the facilities. So we're talking about missiles, and the pipeline and the facilities and the ability to churn out more crude oil and refine it. Those were rebuilt rather quickly. People thought it would take months, maybe even a year, and it only took a few weeks. So this is very troubling, and we're going to have to keep an eye on this. Any further attacks would certainly be jarring, but I think this is probably going to be one of those one-off events that raises awareness, fortunately, because this is an issue. Cyber attacks on our infrastructure, especially in the state that it is very concerning.
Yeah, most definitely. And I've been reading up this morning on what the importance of this pipeline is, and maybe, even if it's a one-off event, maybe raises the flag for other firms to try to increase their cybersecurity. So basically, fuel coming from the Gulf up to the Northeast, it goes between 3 and 5 miles an hour. So not super speedy, but it gets there. So some of the supply might be substituted with oil tankers, gasoline tankers bringing fuel to the United States. That's a much slower proposition, though. It takes 10 to 14 days, according to Clearview Energy Partners. You have, of course, federal stockpiles you could use to subsidize what we're seeing, the shortfall here. But again, all of that takes time. It's more friction within the system. And in the meantime, you could see those gasoline prices continue to work their way higher. Brian?
Yeah, I'm just watching too. Julie, you mentioned the cyber angle here. FireEye, which has helped detect this problem here in the pipeline. Shares are up about 5% pre-market. Also seeing a bid in CrowdStrike, another cybersecurity play, and even Cisco. We think of a Cisco as primarily an infrastructure play in tech and in 5G, but they're also in the cybersecurity business, seeing that stock up pop about 1%, a little under 1% pre-market as well.
Yeah, the thing I'll just say about this that you never like to see in these kinds of situations are quotes and commentary to the effect of, we certainly hope this doesn't last more than 2 more days, or no one was really thinking about this that much, and now it's a major issue over the weekend. Now, granted, we kind of see this play out over time. The weekend, nothing happens in markets, obviously, right? And then oil-related stories. I mean, I can remember days in 2017. It's like, Iran this, Gulf tensions that. Well, of course, nothing really amounts to that. So you sort of, as a markets reporter, you don't know which bucket to put it into. No one's talking about this, which means it's going to get very bad very fast, or the just another weekend oil concern story. I think right now it's unclear which bucket it will fall into, but the speed with which this went from a story that was not talked about because it had not happened yet, right? Friday we were focused on the jobs report and stocks going higher. No one even knew there'd been this penetration into the pipeline system. And now sitting here Monday morning to not yet see a resolution certainly has I guess my spidey sense up a little bit. The market, however, which in general one is better off deferring to, certainly seems to be okay with things this morning.
Yes, most definitely. I mean, the timing also matters, right? That we're headed into the summer driving season, getting pretty close to Memorial Day weekend. So sort of there's a heightened sensitivity to this kind of stuff. Jared, finally, just want to point out Colonial Pipeline is not a publicly operated company. It is controlled by Koch Industries and some other partners. What about some of the publicly traded refiners and other companies within the oil complex? Are we seeing any kind of action there?
Yeah, I looked at some of the majors and especially overseas because they're actually trading in a liquid environment there. Typically, you will see energy prices when you have a spike in crude or refinery problem issue like this, and you see spiking gasoline prices. That can affect input costs in different ways. And sometimes, if you take a look, if you remember back, we had a polar vortex earlier in the year. These can have outsized effects on not only energy stocks, but also in non-intuitive ways because sometimes they're taking out capacity. Now, in the current case, simply having higher prices, that tends to benefit the energy companies more. But once you start getting spiking gasoline prices, that just means that the input prices are higher. So that can actually weigh on margins. So you have upstream operations when you're talking about the majors, that's digging the crude and pumping it out of the ground. And then you have downstream operations. That's a refining part. So the refiners maybe get squeezed a little bit. And then the majors, the integrated, because they have both, maybe just benefit a little bit from the rise in price. But as I said, I think this is probably a temporary one-off event, and we'll see prices calm down in the coming days and weeks.